Hello, everyone. James McBride here. Right behind me is the CBIT building. That's where I work on the beautiful campus at EAC. It is great. I love this building. I love the campus. I love the school. And I'm glad to be talking with you today about your last line of defense. So I'm going to give you a scenario that can definitely happen to you within the walls and confines of people hacking you, you getting Trojans or viruses that can cause you big issues. So let's go ahead and share my screen here. Let's go to something that can happen. Here is a little example of ransomware encryption in progress. So this type of thing can happen through a virus or through a Trojan, but basically you get this on your computer and it goes through and secretly, so you don't know this is happening unless you're monitoring how much CPU usage, or you recognize that your computer now, the fan is running absolutely crazy and it's overheating. Now we're going to take a look at Windows first, but this can happen on a Mac as well. And so we need to be aware of both. So in this one, we'll take a look at, well, how do you safeguard against this? Throughout this course, we've really sectioned off different areas. So it's safe web browsing, dealing with email, that kind of thing. How do you put on a virus scanner? How do you make sure that you're not responding to pop-ups? And I mean, right, it's the whole thing. It's the same basic information of really don't trust people, but this is what you're going to see. This is how they're going to try to fool you in all these different situations. And we call that layered defense, that you're trying to layer on in these different areas your defense. And most of that is, again, you saying, I know what you're trying to do here, and I'm not going to let you. But there's, of course, these tools. And throughout this course, there's tools that you can use to help secure. And of course, malware protection is a big one of those. So let's say that malware protection did not find this because it is a Trojan, that you were fooled into clicking and you said install. And now when it's done, going through and finding all your photos on the computer and encrypting every single one of them so that you cannot use them, cannot get them back, and you end up with an encrypted file. So you end up with this, and it's encrypted. And it's done that for everything. You get a pop-up that says, hey, we encrypted all your photos. Go check. You can't get to them. So if you want those back, pay us this amount and we'll unencrypt them for you. And maybe you pay them and they unencrypt them, or maybe you pay them and they don't. Or maybe this came through in a virus and it was able to encrypt everything and there is no pop-up asking you for payment. So this is a big way that hackers attack people. Now, I want to point out that we don't really have this problem so much over on the mobile operating system side of things. And I want people to understand a little bit about why that's happening. Sorry, need a drink. Mobile operating systems are basically taken from desktop operating systems. But in their design, all these security problems were there. Not all of them, obviously, they just keep improving and getting better and worse. But the problems of understanding this device is connected to the World Wide Web, the internet, the cloud, the deep web, the dark web, it's connected to everything. So we need to keep it protected. That was in the design philosophy. So they really tried to make sure that as they produced this mobile operating system, that it was better than the desktop. The desktop operating systems, of course, have done a lot to try to secure themselves. However, they have to maintain backwards compatibility with software people still want to use, and that does cause some issues. So what you end up with on your phone is that you have 10,000 photos on here. You took like 15 photos of the waffle that you had this morning, and all of them are the same. But you know, remember, some of you may be old enough to remember when you had like a roll of film that had like 12 shots in it, and every single one was precious. You know, it's like, okay, I got to take this one shot. It's just the one I want to take. Now we just go bam, 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 bam. We just take tons of photos, but they are important to us. Photos, videos are probably the most important personal data that we have. We want them protected. Well, on a phone, most of you are aware that you can just upload that to the cloud. If it's Android, if it's Google, then you can put it into Google's cloud. If it's Apple's, then you can put it into Apple's cloud. And then there's others, like Microsoft has a tie-in so that if you're using 365, it'll copy your camera roll up to them. And yeah, you also know that if you're using Apple, they want like gold bricks every month for how much data you can put out there. And you've got so many photos, there's no way that you're going to fit it in the little tiny space that they give you, and it costs so much money. And then over on the Google side, oh yeah, that doesn't cost anything other than the fact that once you upload it into their cloud, they own it. And that really is, according to the contract, they get to do whatever they want to with those. And so we don't really deal with, oh, I got a malware on this and it encrypted all of my photos. Could that happen? Yes, that could happen. It's not a total non-thought. You could have that happen on your Android device, to a lesser extent on your iPhone, but it still could happen. So let's just say that the worst case scenario, it did happen. So you got some kind of Trojan on your phone. Somehow your phone didn't figure it out, and it's gone through and encrypted all of those photos. Well, then all those photos are going to be backed up to the cloud. They're going to be now encrypted onto the cloud. And that's going to happen pretty rapidly. The same thing is happening on a PC. So over here on a PC, let's look at Windows. If we type in backup, if you have the newest version of Windows 11, this is what pops up. You type Windows backup. Sorry, I should have paused on that. So let's type backup again. Should have paused. Right here is best match. There's this universal application, which means it's newer. That's all that really means. It's called Windows Backup, and it shows, hey, an arrow going to a cloud. And so here it is. It's like, hey, back up your folders, apps, settings, do all that stuff, just like on your phone. So basically what's happening is it's so popular on your phone, your mobile devices, Microsoft will say, okay, we'll do it on Windows. So you hit continue, and it's like, oh, hey, sign into your Microsoft account. Same issue here now. So as soon as I sign in, it's going to push it to the cloud, and then it's going to say, you want more space? That's what's going to happen. So this is no different. Now, if you have an older version of Windows, when you type backup, you'll actually get one that pops up here that says Windows 7 backup. And that one actually will do backup stuff, but it's there it is right here, Windows 7 backup. However, we don't know how long we're going to have Windows 7 backup with us. It's Windows 7, so it's only really here because people in Windows 7 were using it. And you can see that I haven't set this up. This is a more old school traditional way to back things up. Well, I actually have another way to do it on Windows. And Microsoft is really straight up. I mean, you can go to their website and say, how do I back up stuff? And they'll give you these options. But they're really, really poor in telling you these things in the operating system itself. Like you'd think that when you got an update or something, it would come up and say, hey, did you know you have access to this program that does these things for you? But anyway, this has been there for a while, and it's called file history. File history. And file history is the newer way of doing a backup. So you type file history, and that takes you, as it'll do exactly what mine did. File history. It may not, Windows is kind of weird about this. Sometimes this isn't the best match. Sometimes they'll put other things up there. It may be down a little bit, but you'll see it, file history. You'll see it someplace. And when you hit that, it takes you to this screen, which is kind of an old school screen, isn't it? It's kind of like the way this has been for a while. Now, I had this set up. See, I had a drive E that I was pushing this to, and I don't even know what it did with that. But I've got a different drive that I want to use. On yours, what'll happen is it'll come up and say, file history is not set up. Turn on. So it'll actually, say turn on, you'll have to click it. And it'll say file history is off. When you do that, it'll actually say, okay, where do you want to put this? So let's describe the best situation that you can have. You got a Windows phone, you got an Android phone, it doesn't matter. You can take the USB cable, plug it into your computer, and your computer will see that phone and it'll say, hey, do you want to connect to this thing? And so you'll get a prompt on the system. As a matter of fact, I should just do that so I can show you. But you'll get a prompt on the system that says you want to connect to this phone, and you'll get a prompt on the phone saying you want to connect to this device. That's to safeguard somebody just got your phone and now they're going to plug in to the computer and take all your data off. So they're going to require you to put in the PIN or facial recognition or something like that in order to say that's okay. On the computer side, on the Windows side, this thing may be some kind of hacking device. Sorry, you can't see it. This may be a hacking device. And so on Windows or on Mac, it's going to say, do you want to connect to this thing? Right. So they're making sure that you're not just hacked through plugging this in. Once you plug it in, it'll come up and say, hey, do you want to copy all these photos? And you can say, yeah, I want to copy all these photos. And it'll take all the photos and it won't remove them from this device, won't remove them. It'll just copy them into the photos directory. Now, basically, you have a backup. So just that process of plugging in your phone to the computer backs up those photos. And of course, you'll have some other options there as well. On Windows, that's the way it works. On Mac, then it runs it through iTunes, but it doesn't matter. You still have a backup of all those photos, all those videos, those special documents now on your computer. That's great. Okay, so now let's take it a step further. Let's really get down to how do we protect from this ransomware that still could get on our computer and massively change all those files on our computer. Now, that would not massively change your phone. You would still have the photos on there. See where I'm going with that? So you got this layered approach where if you're taking your phone and you're plugging that into your computer and you're backing up all that to your computer, you have a backup on your computer, you have your phone gets run over by the car, the phone somehow gets stuff encrypted, you still have your computer with those photos on it. Of course, those photos are only going to be as recent as whenever you plugged it in and told it to do that. But still, it's great. Now, the next step is let's turn on file history. So you come into file history, and I have to select another drive. You would have to select a drive to begin with. And so I've got this G drive here, so I'm going to say that. And notice you can actually add a network connection. So those of you that are really advanced and you've got that router out there, and there's a hard drive plugged into it, you can do that. You go ahead and say, okay, do you want to move your existing files too? We found some files you previously copied using file history. We can move them to your new drive. Yeah, do that if you can. And oh, it says it can't do it. It says it's not ready, probably because the dang thing fell asleep. So let's troubleshoot a little bit here. Might as well do this while we're on the camera, in case it happens to you. So let me just make sure. Okay, so that's the drive. I just came in and clicked on the drive to tell it to read it, to see if it needs to be waking up that way. So there it is. I don't think this is going to work. I think it's actually going to come up. I will say no to that this time. You won't get that question, right? You haven't used it before. It's not a problem. So there you go. File history is on. It is now going to copy libraries, desktops, contacts, and favorites to this drive. File history is really, really cool in the fact that anytime a file changes, it actually creates another copy of it onto that drive, which is awesome. All right, so it's all just doing it for you. You can actually come in and say, I don't want you to do these certain folders. If, for instance, if you were like, oh, I got this old, directory that's got like 2 terabytes of information in it, and I don't need that backed up. You can exclude a folder. And then in advanced settings, you can actually say, okay, when do I want to deal with these copies, and how long should I save these copies? Meaning that if, let's just look at it this way, you go into a picture and you crop it. Now that's 2 different pictures, 2 different files, I should say. Then you go in and you colorize that photo and you save it as something else, because you're going to do, now there's 3. So what this is saying is, look, you have these different versions. Is if you go into Word and you start typing in a document and then it auto saves right then, that's one version. And then you type some more and it auto saves, that's a second version. And so it keeps all these versions, which is fantastic. And so that's really, keep it forever, or no, I want you to do this for 1 month or until the space is needed, which is usually, that's a good option, because what it'll do is it'll rotate. This is actually like a terabyte drive, so you've got a lot of room on there. But let's say I have more than a terabyte of photos and videos, not on this machine. So this wouldn't work. I'd need like a 8 terabyte drive for that other machine to deal with. So what forever means, I'm going to go ahead and I'll just keep going until this whole drive is full. And then what's going to happen is the drive will be full. And I'll have to tell you the drive's full. And you'll have to choose another drive. Or you'll have to say, no, until I need the space. And then take the really old stuff, throw that out, and put the new stuff in. This different versions means that this will copy an encrypted version on, but you'll still have the file from before. And that means you can actually, let me show you how this works. I don't really have too much that's copied on here. So let's go to, you don't actually do it this way. See how it's got this folder here? You don't need to do that. Let's go to, oh, now it's going to take forever trying to read that. See, this should just back up. I double click that. This is everything that it's backing up, right? It's taking the documents, the desktops, it's taking the pictures. There's pictures right there. So this is actually the real folder where the pictures are. So I'm going to show you. Let's just take this photo and right click on it. It's working. It's working. You can see it's like ting, 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 ting. And yeah, it's doing a little bit here. And we're going to go down to properties. Sorry. Go to properties on here. And there's previous versions. Now, there's only one version of this. I haven't edited or anything. But if I did have previous versions, they would appear here. So you can just right click on the file and the previous versions are in there. So if this all became encrypted, I would have a previous version on there. And I could click it and hit restore, or I could click it and I could drag it out. I could drag it to a different storage device. This was part of their server system years and years and years ago, and they put it into Windows, and it's a fantastic thing that honestly most people are not at all aware of. I don't know how many documents I've got here. There's stuff in Zoom. I know that. I deleted them. I was going to show you one that actually had different versions. But yeah, it'll have previous versions and you can just drag that out. So that means if you have file history all set up, ready to go, and you dump your phone pictures onto your computer, it will automatically copy that over to this backup system. You just leave it plugged in. You don't have to do anything else. You just leave that thing plugged in. And even if you've got like this is a notebook that I've got here, even if I've got a notebook and that's not always plugged in, as soon as I plug it in, it's going to go, oh, that backup space is available. So let me go ahead and do my previous versions. Let me go through and check that out and get it all copied. It'll do that every time it's plugged in. Yeah, of course, if you're in a desktop situation, then you just plug in that drive and away it goes. So again, if this process happened, just to relook at this, if all of a sudden you're like, oh my goodness, they just encrypted everything. Well, I don't care what they're saying. What I can do is go over to my previous versions and say, can you restore all this stuff? Now, before you do that, right, you want to make sure, okay, what was this Trojan? I need to get that off my system. That's another video. So we'll look at system restore in another video. So I need to get that off. Make sure that this Trojan's gone or the virus is gone. I'm all good to go. Some people are just like, I'm not even messing with that. I'm going to just redo the system, right? I obliterate it all. And then I can now take that previous file and just copy it right over, and all my photos are back. Backups are vital. Let me have you look at one other thing over here. Amazon. You don't have to buy from Amazon, right? I'm just using them because a lot of people do. Let's look at USB hard disk drive. There are two types of hard disk drives that you will see. Now, the reason we're looking at hard disk drives instead of SSDs is because they're cheaper. And for a backup, you really don't need to use the SSD. I'm using it just as an example. I would use a hard drive. And so these are actually the small ones. These are the ones that really are about this big. This is a battery, so, but they're about this big, and they're highly portable. And so you get 5 terabytes for a couple of $100, and you just plug that in and let it go. However, there are these, and this is a bigger drive. And let's look at this one. This is a good example. No, I don't want. Let's actually look for. I want to do a search, make sure. Let's look at elements. I believe Western Digital to be the best. You can get whatever you want out there, but okay, so these are all the small ones. The small ones are going to be, this one is a bigger one. That's 8 terabytes for $242. That's a lot. That's a lot of terabytes. Let's find one that's down here. This is half the size for about half the price. Basically, what I'm trying to tell you is, sorry, I should have just led with that, is that the bigger drives, when they're about this big, about that high, as a matter of fact, I've got one sitting down here, so I'll show you. Yeah, got that. Move it here in front of my face there. This is a big drive, not like this one, which is much smaller. These are cheaper. They're faster. They require an external power source plus the USB, because this is the old, big drive that would go in any desktop system. So if you're never moving it, that's what I would recommend. I would recommend finding one of those that's a bigger drive, so that it's cheaper, it's quicker, and it's on your desktop. It doesn't matter, and it's just sitting there, usually in sleep mode, until you plug it in, and then it kicks on. And of course, if you're talking about your desktop computer, it's just always there. And whenever that program needs to back up, it'll go, hey, you need to wake up. And then it'll just start copying some stuff to it. And you never have to worry about it. You just let it do its thing. You get 4 terabytes. It really, how much space you need depends on how much you're storing. But to make it simple, if you get something around 2 terabytes, 4 terabytes, 8 terabytes, if that's just more data it can store. That little option that we were looking at in our file history, sorry, where basically it's like, well, forever, that's just more, right? That's just more copies of those files that you can have kept on that drive for a longer period of time. Nobody needs to go out and break the bank. You just need to find something that, okay, this will fit within my budget. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get that. And from then on, I'll be able to just, 500 gigabytes is not enough. But then I'll be able to just copy that stuff off. Everything will be good. There's one, 6 terabytes, 254. There's still cheaper ones you can find. I should have just gone to eBay. On Amazon, they're always trying to sell you the new stuff. And so unless you know what model you're looking for, it can be difficult to find it. So let's go to eBay. And yeah, I buy a lot of stuff off of eBay. I buy a lot more off of Amazon, but if we say external HDD, so there's the small ones. That's an SSD. So SSD, again, are going to be smaller, faster, but the honest truth is there's, it's not really part of this class, but there's only so many read and writes on SSDs before they're dead. And hard disks do not have that problem. So those older hard disks are still very, very valuable as far as what we're trying to do with it. And of course you say, oh, wow, yeah, this is a knockoff. So good luck. It's probably not 8 terabytes. There's one. There's a Seagate. This is an 8 terabyte, and it's from 125. It depends, apparently, to 330. There's another one. There's a MyBook. It's a 4 terabyte for $70. So there's a lot of different prices. You find one that fits within your price range. You get it. You plug it into your computer. You turn on file history, and you just let it go. And that saves you from this issue and a bunch of other issues that could happen. But this is a good example of one. You'll always have in there some history of it. On the Mac, we'll take a look at that, but they have the same thing. They call theirs Time Machine. They always have to have a fancy name. You use Time Machine to do pretty much the same thing. And on a Mac, it's a little easier. Again, we'll show you that, but you just plug it in. It says, you want to use this as a Time Machine drive? You say yes, and it's done. And that works exactly the same way. All right, so that is it for this particular video. Oh, you know what? Let's do one more thing for this particular video. You can let's go to the store. So we'll actually go to Microsoft Store. Of course, you can find this stuff online, but again, it's always safer to start with the store and see if you can find it there. File backup. So these are other programs that you can use to do all sorts of different fancy things. I'm showing you the free one. Microsoft has it built in. It's super fancy. A lot of people don't even know it, so they go buy one of these and they had no idea that it was in there to begin with. But you can look at any of these, look at the reviews on them, and find out, easy backup here. I'm sure this is not totally free. It's just free for a certain amount. And you can use these programs, and they'll set up a traditional type schedule where basically you just say, okay, I want you to back up every Tuesday at this time, and it just backs up that. And then the next time it backs up the same stuff again. It uses more space when it does that, but you can use one of these to set up your own schedule to do that with. And of course, there's a bunch that are out there, and I will point out a few legit ones here. There's no real reason to do an entire system backup. Let me just point that out. Oh, Barracuda. I should see if they actually have, something. Barracuda are like the big dogs. They do a lot of stuff. And so I'm like, is this like a backup that you do off of a system? It's not pulling up what I want. They've got a lot of Microsoft support stuff there. Okay. Still don't want me to, there we go. So these people are huge in this type of business, and they're pretty fair. There's a couple of other ones. Easy Tools. I need to look them up. I like these guys a little more. They're always having a flash sale. Everything is always on sale at their site. But it's pretty standard. So you can use their free backup system, and then of course you can use professional would be fine for anybody right here. They go all the way to the server level. They do some really fancy stuff. But this is more traditional backups, and by that I mean what I said before. Oh, on Tuesday do this kind of backup. On Wednesday do this kind of backup. And then they actually have a way to clone your whole computer. That definitely is not this video. But yeah, that company is a good one to get backup software from. That would be my top recommendation. If you have other questions, let me know. You know, if there's something you want to delve into, and we can take a look at that. But otherwise, thanks for watching. And I'm serious. Go get one of those hard drives, plug it into your machine, get file copy going now. And if you got a Mac, watch the next video. It's really short because we already talked about this stuff in this one.